Accountability partner.
So what time does 7 o'clock meeting start?
7 o'clock!
7 o'clock, very good. As you might notice, we're missing Eric and Sean tonight, so shout out Eric and Sean. We're carrying on without you. Also, because I don't want to forget, I need to shout out to Patrick in Moorhead, Minnesota. I got to shout out to our friends in Norman, Oklahoma. There's more than a couple now, and also all our friends in Edmonton and Calgary. We open every meeting with a prayer, and Wayne's here tonight to do that.
Shit, we got all kinds of double duties tonight. Many hats. Hello, everybody. Heavenly Father, thank you for this time that we could spend together. Lord, empower us to walk out and to be the light for you in this world. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Wayne. So for those of you who may be joining us for the first time, what we do here may be a little unique to some of you, but what we do, we've been doing for lots of years, we take a look at the suggested instructions for a step or so a week directly out of this book, and we use this book in 12-Step Recovery. Why? Yeah, the process is described by the authors of this book has been proven to work for addicts of hopeless variety, addicts to alcohol and other substances and other behavioral disorders. So what we do here is not tell you what the book says, but to show you how to find what it says to you, because it's a book of experience. And if you've not had the experience, then it typically requires somebody to call to your attention the experience you're having and the experience they're describing. Right? Because this is about awakening in the spirit. So at a minimum, I've been asleep, if not dead. Yes? And so it's going to be very unfamiliar to awaken in the spirit, have an awakening happening within me. And so it's a unique experience that we can share and immediately recognize, and it immediately comes with the signature of the spirit. But when we're not used to it, we don't know what's happening to us, and we don't know who to share it with. Right? So the whole purpose of this is to help people. Right? So tonight we're going to take a look at the step 3 decision. And most of you that have ever been in an AA room have probably heard this portion of AA's book read, because most AA meetings use a portion of chapter 5 as part of their, kickoff readings. It's a little chapter called How It Works. And so you understand they're not telling you how the power works, because they've already told us no one can fully define or comprehend that power, which is God. Power. But we do have a process that seems to lead to a spiritual awakening within us. Yes? Yes. And so this is to precise instruction on how the process works in this chapter. Make sense? So starts out with a promise and a condition. Says, rarely have we seen a person fail who's thoroughly followed our path. So did you catch the promise? Rarely have we seen a person fail. And this is the story told by the first 100 or the first several thousand. And if anyone knows anything about addiction stats today, none of us would describe failure to recover from addictive disorder rare in the field anymore. But if they did these things back then, what they're telling you is it was rare for them to see it. But they had a condition, and that was what?
Thoroughly
followed our path. Right? So they didn't say paths. There's 100 people telling the story of an experience of several thousand, one path. So in case you think that's an accident, contemplate that. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program, usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. So one question you might ask yourself if you've struggled is, do you perceive yourself to be a cannot or a will not? And many people don't know, truthfully. Some people think they are a will not till they find out they're a cannot. And the answer to either still won't amount to sobriety and freedom for me. So, but what we'd like to do is there something you can do to participate? Well, then let's try that and see what happens. facts, right?
Yeah.
Okay. This says they're constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. So about what?
Their problem.
Yeah, maybe their problem. They've described the problem very directly. They said there's one symptom you have in common. That one symptom is what?
Phenomenon of craving.
Yeah, the doctor calls it, this phenomenon of craving. It may be a manifestation of an allergy, but the inability to stop once I start, right? However you do that. And then the other thing they talked about was the experience of power, peace, happiness, a sense of direction flowing in. Yes? So we've got to be honest with both. They're not asking me to live abstinent. They're asking me to switch my dependence. Right? And they're just saying that's what we have to do. We're dependent by nature. We're seekers by nature. So I'm going to be seeking something. If I don't seek in the right place for the right thing, then I'm going to be out in the world seeking. Does it make sense? All right. So, and then it says, so basically they're just letting you know, have you felt the Spirit? We had our encounter in 2. Have you felt that power, peace, happiness? Have you had that called to your attention? Those of you brand new, the person taking you through it may feel it for you. You may be I was so dead in the Spirit, I couldn't feel it. The guy taking me through it felt it. Called it to my attention. It wasn't until I was taking someone else through that I started feeling it. So, and then I knew what everyone was talking about. So then it says there are such unfortunates. So who are these unfortunates? Constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves about the experience of the Spirit and my inability to leave it alone. Yes? For whatever reason. And then it says they're not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They're naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. So the manner of living is going to be described here. And the only thing you got to ask yourself there, if you're wondering, am I that one? Because some of us that struggled a long time, we started to think we were that guy they're talking about, constitutionally incapable. I mean, I really believe that about myself. But when someone made sense to me what the process was that they were describing, why I'm going to have my encounter, I'm going to know that the power we call God is a sensory experience. It's tangible. It's relevant to my life. And I can feel it, and I can feel it on you. And once I knew that, then unblocking my consciousness through the inventory, looking at my pomps, calamities, and worship that were obscuring that awareness of being aware of that power to live down inside me, became a no-brainer. Of course I wanted to see it. I wanted to know more. I wanted to grow more, yeah? And then discussing it with another person, I was so sick, I had no choice but to discuss it with another person because they had to do my writing. But other people may do it different. All I'm saying is discussing it with another was a no-brainer because this was someone that knew the process. And then the prayers were explained to me as I went along. I'm just asking for power. Now that I've encountered power and I've already admitted powerlessness, now I want the power to go with me to face my fears. Yes? Consciously. All right. So it says there are those too who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. So how many of you have encountered those people in our fellowships with grave emotional and mental disorder? A lot of hands up here. How many of you have been here long enough to realize it's you? Because one of the things they don't like to do, they don't want to call us anything because then our defenses go up. But any of you been here long enough to realize how sick you really were and what a miracle your own recovery is? Because but when we get here, we don't want to be here. Like, I don't want to be like those people. The one overwhelming thought in my mind the first AA meeting I had to go to was, I hope I don't run into anyone who knows me. And within the first 3 meetings, I ran into someone who knew me. And the first thing I said to him was, Dave, what are you doing here? And he goes, what are you doing here, asshole? I thought, oh. I guess if we run into each other here, it's kind of, yeah, and he was never very polite. Anyway, so our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we're like now. The step process is going to arm me with the facts about myself, what I used to be like, what happened, what I'm like now, right? And the difference between what I used to be like and what I'm like now is the power I encounter. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
And so a lot of time over the years, we've made it about circumstance, what it was like. That's all delusion. No one cares what it was like. That's just a contest to see who's got the biggest mess. What I'm trying to deliver is a powerful message, not a big mess, right? And so the transformation in me from the wretch I was to a somewhat productive member of society, most days, is miraculous. Because that's not how I would have been described. Yes? All right. So if you've decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. We forget to do that as sponsors, people. First of all, we need to know, do you want what we have? And it has nothing to do with the car I drive or the house I live in or the companionship you see me with. It has nothing to do with externals. You want to go look at that? Page 25. Because I'm not the we and you're not the we, right? We want to know what they had, right? So you go to page 25 and they tell you what they have. In the middle of that page, it says the great fact is just this and nothing less. That we've had deep and effective spiritual experiences, which has revolutionized our whole attitude toward life, toward our fellows, and toward God's universe. So how many of you would have to admit that the life you were living at different times required some kind of a revolution to get a better outcome?
Yes.
Whether you had behavioral issues or addictive disorders or whatever, something had to change, and it had to change in me, right? I'd already tried to mold the world to my liking, and I ended up where I was.
Ouch.
All right, so they're telling you right away they had a an effective spiritual experience that did that revolution within them. Yes?
Yes.
And then it says the central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. He's commenced to accomplish those things for us, which we could never do by ourselves. Now, you can read that and think nothing of it, but remember, half of these guys were devout atheists or agnostics making this declaration. They had been so revolutionized by the power they denied that they stood there in certainty and said, you can prove to me you don't exist before you can prove to me that God doesn't exist because he lives in you. That's what they said.
Yep.
So to those people that say, well, you can stay where you can stay, you can stay where you can stay, but that's not what happened to them. Their whole life was revolutionized by the power they found within themselves.
Right.
And to the extent they would go share that with people, so those of you that are students of the other book, the other 50%, by the blood of the Lamb and the word of my testimony, all the schemes of the evil one are cast down. That's why my insanity doesn't return, because I continue to testify.
Amen.
Does that make sense? People don't get told that. It's so important. You don't have to do the thing we call sponsorship, but you've got to bear witness. Or the insanity returns. Yeah? All right. So I'm going to go back to say, if you want that revolution, and you want to perpetuate that in your life, and you're willing to go to any length to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. And see, if you don't get an answer to the affirmative and you don't understand why you're embarking on it, then you're never going to grow in conscious relation, because you have to move into conscious relation consciously. Does that make sense? Examine it with your logical senses. Choose it. All right, so then it says that some of these we bought. Now, they're being really honest, right? We walk into every recovery room, and there on the wall is a 4, a 5, an 8, and then a 9. Damn, I knew I had to give it all back. I never stole so much. I'm never telling that to anyone. I'm taking that to the grave. Whatever it is. Yes?
Yes.
But the point is, you just saw it on the wall. You didn't, no one's asking to bite the whole thing. Let's get you your encounter and then see what happens. Once that power to outgrow fear starts manifesting within you, you'll see the potential for a better life for yourself, and you'll go get it. I just tell people, the reason no one ever had to convince me to take the second hit of cocaine is that power convinced me to take the second hit. And the only way I could recover from that kind of addictive disorder was I found another power, a superior power, that always took the next hit for me.
Yes. Yes.
He always took another bite. Whenever I got discouraged, I got another bite. Still happens to this day, and that's been a long time. So at some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. So I'm earnestly begging you, be honest and thorough from the very start, because the half measures aren't going to get you what you think they're going to get you. Right? And the thing is, you'd never cut your own dough. So don't start cutting your own spiritual awakening. Because that's what we got. That's our lubricant in this world of illusions, is awareness of the spirit. Make sense?
Yes.
All right, so some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Now I'm talking to some of us that, like to live the double life. I'm the same as I was, I just don't use. That won't work for me, because the guy I was used. And the other thing is, if I keep trying to game and play the fool, I'm going to end up, I really had to do an about face. So that's what they're saying. You can't keep your feet in both camps. Pick a path and go. Yeah? You do it. We see people do it. It just doesn't work out. So remember that we deal with alcohol. Cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it's too much for us. But there is one who has all power. That one is
Power.
That one is God. That's all the power is found in that power within you. Yes? All? Yeah, I don't have to go outside of me looking for knowledge or information or comfort or peace or joy. In fact, when I get disturbed in the world, I'm going to have to go back. In the last analysis, it's only there that he found it was so with us. Which is why you got to stay in practice in this. It's a manner of living for a lifetime. Yeah? All right, so then it says, may you find him now. They told us last week precise instructions where and how. Where are we going looking?
Deep down inside.
Deep down inside. And how are we going looking? Sometimes we have to search fearlessly. So that would make sense that I'm trying to enter into a decision with this power to go in with me and get a searching and fearless moral inventory of me. Yes? And for those of you that are fearing that it's a trash hunt and you're just going to disclose your ugly secrets, no, it's a treasure hunt. But we're going to get the trash out of the way to get to the goal. Make sense? So half measures availed us nothing. So they're telling you again, new emphasis. They've tried half measures. How many of you have tried half measures? How many of you felt like they were getting you about half? So there's always the lie but I don't know half of what. I don't know what I've been delivered from, and I don't know what I'm being delivered to. But what I do know is, having been delivered to something more than I ever imagined, I would not have wanted to cheat myself through half measures for long. And that's my witness to anyone else who, the fact is I always want to be as fit as I can be, in spite of the evidence physically that I'm not working too hard on that right now. So, yeah, cake is getting with that. So we stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Again, I call your attention, by their witness, half of them were atheists or agnostics. Now they're talking to something real within them, real to them, asking for protection and care with complete abandon. That's pretty strong words, don't you think?
Yes.
What else did we do with complete abandon?
God loaded.
Chase that needle, chase that powder, chase that bottle, chase that high, chase that escape, even if it was just violence and criminal behavior, we chased that rush, didn't we? With reckless abandon. That's what they're talking about. Okay, so here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. Guys, call people's attention that we really do have a program of recovery, and it's not about sitting in fellowship halls. Otherwise, they would have said, here are the meetings we went to, which are suggested as a program of recovery. They didn't say that, did they? So here are the steps we took, right? If I'm going to get on this path with them, the one path, I'm going to need to do what they did. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so one, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol. Powerless when?
Always.
Before, during, after. Drunk and sober.
Yeah, that's the trick, right? Because I think once I've stopped, I just don't pick up no matter what until I do. Yeah? But I've forgotten about that, cunning, baffling, powerful obsession. And it's not about an obsession to use it first. It's an obsession to control. So if you're just running around restless, irritable, and discontent, which the doctor said, then you're in your control obsession. And you're not far from your drug addictive disorder. Does it make sense? No matter how long you've been sober. Okay. So then it says, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So there's a little bit of hope. Notice how they didn't say God.
Power.
They said a power greater than ourselves. They want to focus us on the experience, not some theology that's got us prejudiced. Yes?
Yes.
And then it says, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. Over the years, people have said, a God of your understanding. That's not what they said. They said, as we understood Him, and they've already told you. Don't focus on theologies or any of that nonsense. Focus on the power from within. Power, peace, happiness, sense of direction flowing from within. Focus on that. Grow in that. Form a relationship with that, and you'll know who you're talking to, soon enough. Yes?
Yep.
All right, and then made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Admitted to God, ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Humbly ask Him to remove our shortcomings. Made a list of all persons. I don't want to scare people, but you get the point. We're going to, one informs the next, right? I need a step to encounter in order to go in fearlessly, because that doesn't mean without fear. It means in spite of the fear, right? So the decision will not be enacted. How many of you made decisions that you didn't enact? All of us at some time. We probably still do, right? The old timers said you got 3 frogs on a log. One of them makes a decision to jump. How many are on the log?
3.
All 3. You just made a decision. You didn't jump. Right? And so the idea is I'm going to need power to jump. So 2 begets 3. 3, I have a logical reason why I want to now improve consciousness of power, peace, happiness, sense of direction in my life. 4 is me digging that power and purpose out from underneath the calamities, pomps, and worships that have informed my life. In modern therapies, they talk about trauma-informed care. We're looking for the same kind of stuff. We want to find out what's causing the reactions that you're having and then get you to something useful. Yes?
Yes.
All right. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Continued to take personal inventory when we were wrong and promptly admitted it. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious relation with God. Notice how they said our conscious relation at that point. Now they really are talking to you about awareness of being aware. I'm not only aware that there's power in and on me, but it's not of me. It is apart from me. I still think like me, but sometimes I act more like Him. And as I improve upon that, more of the time than it used to be. Right?
Yes.
All right. Praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And then, the Great Commission. Any of you students of the other book, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, not an result, the result. I've awakened in the Spirit for the purpose of announcing the coming kingdom. Those of you that don't read the other book, don't get tripped. It's okay. Just helping people understand that that's an experience, because a lot of times we forget the biblical students because we don't want to offend anyone, but we offend all of them. So, unfortunately, you're talking to a drunk pastor, you're going to get it all from me. So, and I wasn't limited in any way. So, I'm good with pretty much any chemical you ever used in any way you ingested it, in any orifice you ingested it in. We're good. Yeah, that's true. That was for my CMA fans, right? They know a little bit about butt rockets and things like that. And to practice these principles in all our affairs, many of us exclaimed, "What an order, I can't go through with it." So all they're trying to get us to do is not make a chant out of that. Acknowledge how frightened all of us are when we first get here. We have no idea what's going on. Show some sensitivity to that new person. If everyone wants to cut up, fine. But look, all of us looked at this and could, from where we were coming from, could see no way out.
Yeah.
And the only way you ever get to see a way out is someone with their hand out and a sober look and a calm manner that says there is a way out, in a way that I can believe that even about me.
Yeah.
So do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We're not saints. The point is that we're willing to grow along spiritual lines. So are you willing? We got back to the question, will not or cannot? Am I willing to grow along spiritual lines now that someone's made sense of that to me? Because the principles are contained in the steps. We're not going to send you anywhere else. We're just going to get you serving and see what you learn. Yes? The principles we have set down are guides to progress. So within all the step experiences are promises of the step experience, and those are levels of consciousness. They're describing levels of consciousness. So when you get to the 9th step, promises, not regret the past, and wish shut the door on it, all that, that's, I'm awakening in the spirit. I'm now seeing how my past, where I thought I had wasted my life, made me uniquely useful to my brothers and sisters in a similar situation. And now I'm seeing it's all being brought together for the good. Does it make sense? So it says we claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. See, I don't ever want to be done. I thought I was done before and I wasn't done. So the reality is I don't want to be done, but I want to be growing. My illness was progressive. I need my recovery to be progressive. I need to set my sights on something more. So our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. Notice how they separated those 2 thoughts. They didn't tell me about the unmanageability of my life until they introduced me to the power in step 2. Right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm now going to cop to both of those things. My unmanageability was being managed by my chemical addiction until it wasn't. By my behavioral disorder, my reaction to the world. That's how I manage that unmanageability within me. Yes? So that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. How many of you are convinced of that or are on the way to being convinced of that? And we learn it at various stages. When it's just about my addictive disorder, yes, but when I start realizing this is really about my human condition and how miserable I can be, even when I think that I've done everything I wanted to do and I was going to be happy and now I'm still not happy. Because the human experience is just that, right? Storms within us. And I'm thinking, when I get that, I'll have arrived. And then I get that, and this sucks. That God could and would if he were sought. So when we're talking, everyone's doing that really well. They yell out power when I say that so we don't prejudice anyone. But where is the power found? Right? So when it says that power can and will restore me if he's sought. And they've told me what the seeking is going to look like. The very next step of action I take is going to be a searching and fearless moral inventory of me to dig out that power and purpose. Yes? Right. Get armed with the facts about it. So that says being convinced we're at step 3. So being convinced of what? A, B, and C. And if we're honest with ourselves when we're brand new, we're not really convinced. We're just following someone's lead. That's why sponsorship is so critically important. Because we can help them through that process, right? You're going to have to take that leap. Remember they talked about that bridge of faith we had to walk across? That's what we are. We as humans, known in the spirit, we are that bridge of faith for them. Does that make sense? Okay, so which is that we decided to turn our will and our life over to God as we understood Him. Just what do we mean by that, and what do we do? What do we mean? What do we do? From here, it's really simple. I'm going to ask this power to join me in this inventory, and I'm going to follow through on the rest of the step process, all the way through to my awakening and telling others. Yes? That's my commitment at this point. The first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. So it says that that's a requirement. Are you convinced? When we're brand new or not, right? Remember, this book was written by people who already had the experience. So it's their job to say, I'm convinced, and here's why. Again, they tried to send this book out to people and have them read it and recover on their own, and they found out it couldn't be done. We need the bridge of faith. We need demonstration. The spearhead of God's ever-advancing creation is you. Does that make sense?
Yes.
How are we going to know? How are they going to know if you aren't the example of that love on earth? So it says that the first requirement is we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. On that basis, we're almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though our motives are good. How many of you have done an inventory and discovered that?
Yep.
Have good motives, still at a train wreck. All right, so most people try to live by self-propulsion. Pay attention to the authors. They use the words they mean the words they say. They agreed, 100 of them agreed on every word, right? So they said most people try to live by self-propulsion. They did not say most alcoholics try to live by self-propulsion. One can assume that because they're probably people. But they're talking about a bigger test group here. Does it make sense? When they want to talk about alcoholics, they're going to call me out. They're going to say alcoholics, and they'll do that here before we're done tonight. All right? So most people try to live by self-propulsion. Each person is like an actor who wants to run the whole show, is forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of the players in his own way. If his arrangements would only stay put, if only people would do as he wished, the show would be great. Everybody, including himself, would be pleased. Life would be wonderful. How many of you have had that delusion come upon you? And again, when we're in that control addiction, when we find out they're not doing it the way we want them to, and we start trying to justify bad behavior based on how they're speaking or acting, we're just a step away from a drink ourselves. So, I mean, just understand that. That's what that restlessness, irritability, and discontent is. It is the manifestation of a control addiction. So in trying to make these arrangements, our actor may sometimes be quite virtuous. He may be kind, considerate, patient, generous, even modest, and self-sacrificing. Do you find yourselves there?
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, everyone should find yourselves there. And I know there's people within the sound of my voice that are saying, oh no, that's not me. But yeah, it is. It's there. We may have to do some digging, polish you up, but it's there. And then on the other hand, you may be mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest. How many of you see yourself there?
Sometimes.
And some people are more comfortable finding themselves there than the other, and we're going to work on that, right? Because you're not really experiencing the world as it is, you're experiencing the world as you are. So we want to get you out of the idea that that's who you are and show you your complete range. Does it make sense? So that you're realistic and a witness to people. All right, so, but as with most humans, he's more likely to have varied traits. So they say it much more succinctly than I just did. What usually happens?
Doesn't work out so well.
Shit show.
You could be, sitting around watching a step training on a Thursday night. You could find yourself in a detox somewhere watching said training. I don't know. But the show usually doesn't come off very well. Yeah? All right. So he begins to think life doesn't treat him right. How many of you got there? I watch some friends of mine that are loving, good people just go off the chain, and now they do it on social media so everyone can see them off the chain. You know, telling the PO to stuff it. And yeah, they do read your Facebook, dude. See how that works out for you. Hope you look good in orange.
We love you.
He decides to exert himself more and becomes on the next occasion still more demanding or gracious, as the case may be. How many of you have found that you're kind of a chameleon emotionally, or can be? And still the play does not suit him. How many of you have tried to pretend to be okay with outcomes when you really weren't okay? Desperately uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Remember, this is power to philosophically comfort me. That's when I really need to know consciously who this power is and how it manifests in me, because I'll get in that space where I don't want you to know how you're affecting me, and I am powerless. Admitting he may be somewhat at fault, he is sure that other people are more to blame. He becomes angry, indignant, self-pitying. What is his basic trouble? So when they put a question like that, it's pretty simple. If I find myself there, what's my basic trouble? Yes? And then they got some more questions to unpack. Is he not really a self-seeker even when trying to be kind? So did I do something for you, pretending that it had no attachment, and then discover maybe I wasn't even pretending. Maybe I thought I did it completely selflessly, but then you didn't respond in the way I thought you should, and now you're a jerk. You ever done something for somebody and then... I see it all the time on social media. I only regret the times I was kind to people who didn't deserve it. Well, if you're regretting being kind, you're in trouble. I am never regretful anymore of being kind, regardless of the meanness I face, because I will tell you this, kindness and tolerance makes their meanness irrelevant. So we really need to grow in that. And I feel a lot of you feeling it, but the reality is that's easy to say. It's not something I can do. That has to be done in me.
Yeah.
Is he not a victim of the delusion that he can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if only he manages well? So you know the nature of delusion. Delusion is I lie to me and I don't know I'm lying. So have you been victimized by the delusion that somehow you can manage all the events of your life and it's all going to turn out ducky every day? It's just pure delusion, right? And so, you know, I'm going to have to be okay regardless of circumstances because of the certainty of who holds me. Does that make sense? So is it not evident to all the rest of the players that these are the things he wants? So how many of you had the experience of running around pretending you were in charge and someone figured out you weren't in charge? And perhaps they thought they were in charge.
Yeah.
And then you had an altercation of some kind. Okay, so it says, and do not his actions make each of them wish to retaliate, snatching all they can get out of the show. Have you ever been in that setting where everybody wants the credit and no one's really sure what it was we want the credit for anymore? So is he not even in his best moments a producer of confusion rather than harmony? And that's really every question, turn it into a statement and see what it means to you. That's what you want. You know, what is it about this that I find so unsettling?
Yeah.
What attachment have I placed on this worldly outcome that is unsettling to me? It has little to do with other people's part in it. It has to do with my expectation of it. Yeah? So our actor is self-centered, egocentric, as people like to call it nowadays. He's like the retired businessman who lolls in the Florida sunshine in the winter, complaining of the sad state of the nation. The minister who sighs over the sins of the 20th century. Politicians and reformers who are sure all would be utopia if the rest of the world would only behave. The outlaw safecracker who thinks society is wrong, him, and the alcoholic who has lost all and is locked up. Whatever our protestations, are not most of us concerned with ourselves, our resentments, or our self-pity? So do I really care about unrest in the world, or am I just so uncomfortable in my own skin that I'm pointing at everything I see as a source of my agitation? Because it's easy to find sources of our agitation when we're agitated. Yes? And so the reality is that doesn't mean there aren't disturbing things in the world. It just means I'm going to perceive a lot more when the agitation also resides in me. I have access to peace that passes all understanding. And I think people need to internalize that even if they never read that other book. Peace that passes all understanding means in spite of what's going on around me, I'm chill. At my core. Right? Because I know nothing can happen to me that won't benefit me where I'm going.
Right.
All right, so selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our trouble. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us seemingly without provocation, but we invariably find that at some time in the past, we've made a decision based on self, which later placed us in a position to be hurt. I recently went through a business deal. I desperately wanted to have a business that was thriving and helpful, but I also got a little enamored with the potential to make a little money. And I signed everything because I wanted stuff that glittered. And I got a certain amount of stuff that glittered. And then one day, the people I signed the deal with said, we're not honoring the deal anymore. They can't do that. What? They didn't do that. Not a damn thing. Now, do I want to die in my control addiction? No. I invariably find that at some time in the past, I did something based on some expectation in the future that later placed me in this position to be hurt. They did not hurt me. I hurt me with my expectations. And I serve a loving Father who saw my attachment to that, and he stripped me from it because he knew I would never walk away from it. And I will not tell you it doesn't hurt. It hurts deeply. But I did it, and I choose it. The same way my Lord went to the cross.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Power. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to explain that to people because I think people read through it and they don't understand what we're talking about. But it's very real, it's very human, it's very poignant. And the reality is, I have no higher title than child of God. I have no higher calling than a servant. And anything beyond that is pride. So our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourselves. And the alcoholic, they're calling me out, perhaps you. Remember they talked about those regular people? They're just regular examples of self-will run riot. But us alcoholics is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. Any of you? How many of you had to have your extreme called to your attention a time or two? Yeah. So above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. They're setting me up for the fact that most humans that do not have this condition can go on and do pretty much whatever humans do, and they will not have the terrible consequences that me or anyone connected to me will have because I'm a human with an alcoholic condition. I'll do great harm to them and me, right? Because of that condition. So selfishness, from that other book, do not be conformed to this world, rather be transformed through the renewal of your mind. I have to quit conforming to selfish ideologies and get rid of self. It's an illusion. I have no individual apart from power. Does it make sense? So we must, or it kills us. And God, power makes that possible. Now, they wouldn't have said makes that possible if I didn't have a role to play. So no one's saying if I'm hungry, I go sit in a closet and pray for a pizza. What they're saying is start praying as you're walking to the pizza place. Right? Do the next indicated thing. Does it make sense? Okay, so, well, some people think those of us that are of faith are being silly, but we're not being silly. When it's time to wait, then I know that to be still and know, right?
Yeah.
And then everyone else, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? I said, well, because that stuff exhausts me. And until the timing's right, he's going to show it to me when it's time. Now, I can run in circles until then, but I'm fat, if you notice, and I'm going to be all winded. So, and there often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without his aid. Many of us had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but we could not live up to them, even though we would have liked to. Did that ever happen to you?
Yes.
Yeah, and it's frustrating, isn't it? Not only would I have liked to live up to them, but I would have liked for you to see me living up to them. I'd like to have a persona that goes with my ideal, right? And when my persona and my ideal get in conflict, then I'm really a wreck. Then it's got to be your fault, right? All right, so neither could we reduce our self-centeredness much by wishing or trying on our own power. We had to have God's help. Catch the earnestness in that and think about how profound it is that declared atheists or agnostics get to this point. Because they said the experience would change our mind, and they're witnessing to a man, the experience changed their mind. Now remember, they didn't get the experience in 2 or 3. They got the experience helping however many through their 2 or 3. But, there's a whole manner of living involved. If you haven't had your miracle, your awakening, don't stop. But it's not about what meetings you make. It's about the steps you take. Does it make sense? This is the how and the why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. So that's disturbing to people who said they were atheist or agnostic, that they're playing some role they don't believe in. Right? But then it says it didn't work. Next, we decided that here and after in this drama of life, God was going to be our director. He's the principal, we're his agents, he's the father, and we're his children. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone, the new and triumphant arch through which we pass to freedom. So what's the concept they're talking about?
God's in charge.
He's the father, we're his children. Who you are and whose you are. That's the key to all of life. It makes sense?
Yeah.
If you know who you are and whose you are, you're undefeatable, in spite of the circumstance. And you got to know it, because it isn't enough to think it. Right? I thought myself undefeatable and got my ass kicked many times. I thought I was bigger than I was, too. Tougher. Anyway, I digress. When we sincerely took such a position, so how would I demonstrate the sincerity of this position? The only thing indicated at this point is to go through with this inventory, right? If I say I sincerely took the position and I have not produced an inventory, then I've not demonstrated. Because if the sincerity isn't about me, it's demonstration to the other guy, right? Works are observable acts. Works themselves do me no good, but faith without works is dead, because that allows a brother or sister to see faith work. Brings them along. All right, so then it says, all sorts of remarkable things follow. For those of you students of the other book, signs and wonders follow us. And if you don't believe that, go with those of us who make a pretty steady vocation of this, and you will see the dead come back to life, the blind open their eyes, the lame walk. You will see it, and you'll walk it. The prisoners get set free. Yes, they do. And we're not talking about brick and mortar. We're talking about, because we set them free inside the brick and mortar. Right? So we had a new employer, being all powerful. He provided what we needed if we kept close to him and performed his work well. So what's his work? If you love me, feed my sheep.
Lift other people up.
Yep. Be that spearhead of that ever-advancing creation, right? And how do I keep close? A lot of people don't know we can keep close. They think this whole personal relationship. Why am I going to improve conscious contact? Awareness of being aware of power, peace, happiness, sense of direction flowing into me, in and on my life. I will improve consciousness is how I'll keep close. Yes? And he says in the other book, I will never leave you nor forsake you. So you're not alone, I'm with you. That's what he said. So he's a power that is not a standby power. He's a present power, right? All right, so established on such a footing, we became less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans and designs. How many of you have had that experience? Started pouring yourself into others and started having opportunities, doors opening that you could not have seen to even request them to be open. They just flew open. Doors closed that seemingly would have been a pitfall. Yes? And then it said more and more we became interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. How many of you had that happen in your life? Less interested in all this other and just really want to see what I can do to be useful. Yeah? And then it says, as we felt new power flow in. Now listen to them. They're talking about the awakening. These are promises of the third step decision. We felt new power flowing in. So some of you have felt it here tonight. Some of you online have felt it. Have we enjoyed peace of mind? Are you strangely at ease? It makes sense now. You've got some revelation. You've got some hope. You've got some faith for a future. Okay, we're enjoying peace of mind as we discovered we could face life successfully. Yes? As we became conscious of his presence, back to, again, consciousness of presence, awareness of being aware of that presence in and on me, though not of me. In fact, I'm of it. Right? And then it says, we began to lose our fear today, tomorrow, or the hereafter we were reborn. So what's it like to be reborn in the Spirit? Lose your fear of today, tomorrow, or the hereafter. Yes? And if you do have those things, and there's something going on with your spiritual condition, reach out to help. Right? Even unto death. That's one of the chaplains that's a friend of ours. Always says, always be ready to preach, always be ready to pray, always be ready to die. If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. Okay, so we're now at step 3. Many of us said to our Maker as we understood him, God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help with thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. Now, take note, number one, most of us don't speak in King James language, so don't trip. You don't have to. It was just a suggested thing, and they'll tell us that. But look at the order they said it is. Please take away my difficulties that victory over them may bear witness to his power. This isn't about what I'm doing. It's about what he's doing through me. Right? And my difficulties are not the obstacles I placed before myself. Jail sentences, suspensions of driver's licenses, broken relationships. It was my self-condemnation, my guilt, shame, remorse, my self-defeating attitudes about me that were removed as I was empowered to confront those obstacles in power. Yes? That's why we have an amends step eventually, is so we can go set right wrongs. We don't have to live in fear of running into people or hide behind doors anymore. We go set it right. We believe for it, right?
Yes.
And then it says we thought well before taking this step, making sure we were ready. So this is really an inside job, guys. I don't want to say I've made a decision and not be able to demonstrate I've made a decision, and I don't want to do half of any of it. I want to do all of it because I don't really get free until I'm on the other side telling people of freedom. So it says that I can at last abandon myself utterly to him. Then they talk about their experience. We found it very desirable to take this spiritual step with an understanding person, such as our wife, best friend, or spiritual advisor. They caution against that. It's better to meet God alone than with one who might misunderstand. And the reason for that, I've come to believe, is that I really need to admit I have no plan. And I won't necessarily do that with another. But with the power animating me, he already knows my plan. If I've got a plan, we learned we had to fully concede to our innermost self. If anyone else is there, I'm tempted to spin it. But if it's just me and the power, number one, I'm going to know with certainty that the power exists in me. Does it make sense? And then it says the wording was, of course, quite optional, so long as we express the idea. So what's the idea? Take away my difficulties, the victory over them. Let's get it searching. Let's find out what my plan, response, and worships are, so I can properly testify to what you've done, what I was like, what happened, what I'm like now. Yeah. I'm not going to be able to do that properly until I'm armed with the facts about me. Yeah. And then it says, so long as we express the idea of voicing without reservation. Can't do that based on a lie. Can't do that with my foot in the other camp. And then it said this was only a beginning, though if honestly and humbly made an effect, sometimes a very great one was felt at once. Now they're talking about that cool wind of a mountaintop blowing through and through, the things that Bill talks about. We've talked over the years, not everyone has that radical delivery right there, but everyone probably has something of it if someone's there to call their attention to it. I've never taken anyone through the steps that I didn't feel the Spirit and call their attention to it. They may not have described it like Bill, but they knew they knew when they heard me talking what I was talking about from then on. Right? And so it says if honestly and humbly made an effect, sometimes a very great one. Don't put too much on it. Just know that your outcomes are different all of a sudden. I often have told the story about the guy who had been in AA for 10 years, never done the steps. And he kept relapsing. And so he meets me at a meeting. So I take him through 1, 2, 3. And he calls me that night, because I told him, call me that night, tell me what kind of effect you had. And then we'll get started and figure out what we're going to do. So he calls me that night and he goes, man, I just did what you said. I wrote that prayer and I said that prayer and I didn't feel nothing. But my inventory is done. I'd like to discuss it with you tomorrow. And I said, well, some people might say that an inventory after 10 years was quite an effect. Yes? So you just never know what it's going to look like. Don't be too sure. Don't be too quick to judge. Next week we'll look at 4. Thanks. Yeah.